You ever wondered why some people seem to instantly dislike you? Even when there's no clear reason for it, it's as if no matter how friendly or polite you try to be, there's always someone who meets you with a cold look or distant attitude. Why do some people harbor feelings of dislike or resentment toward us without an obvious cause? This is a complex mystery that isn't always rooted in our actions or words. Often the underlying reasons for such negative feelings are buried deep within human psychology. Perhaps silent envy, unspoken insecurities, or simply misunderstandings that grow over time. Understanding why people may develop negative feelings toward us isn't just a matter of curiosity. It's essential for navigating the complex social dynamics we face every day. In this special video, we'll dive into 9 surprising reasons why others might harbor intense negative emotions toward us. These insights could open your eyes and offer new perspectives on the relationships around you. Before we begin, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for the incredible support you've shown. It brings me so much joy to create these videos, and it's even more fulfilling to read your thoughtful and encouraging comments. I read every single one. If this is your first time here, please hit the like button and turn on notifications so YouTube can help more people like you discover this content. Now let's embark on this transformative journey together. Are you ready? 1. Envy and jealousy. One of the most common and profound reasons someone might develop feelings of hostility toward you is envy or jealousy. These corrosive emotions act like a poison in interpersonal relationships, turning admiration into contempt and respect into resentment. Jealousy and envy often arise when someone sees something in you that they wish they had but feel they cannot attain. This feeling can be triggered by various factors, from your professional success and personal achievements to aspects of your character or lifestyle. In many cases, envy and jealousy reflect a person's dissatisfaction with their own life. Instead of drawing inspiration from your accomplishments or feeling happy for your success, they view your qualities and achievements as a mirror reflecting their own perceived shortcomings or misfortunes. This feeling can evolve into deep resentment, causing them to wish for your downfall as a way to soothe their own frustration and discontent. The most damaging aspect of envy and jealousy is that it can lead people to resort to gossip, slander, or even sabotage to undermine your efforts and achievements. They may attempt to discredit your work or spread falsehoods about your character, all in the hope of bringing you down from the pedestal they've placed you on in their own minds. It's crucial to realize that envy and jealousy are issues that belong to the person feeling them, not to you. While it's easy to internalize others' hostility and begin to question or blame yourself, remember that you are not responsible for someone else's feelings of inadequacy or dissatisfaction. Your achievements and qualities shouldn't be diminished just because someone else is struggling with their inner turmoil. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't worry about things outside your control." Other people's envy and jealousy are clearly beyond your control. And Stoicism emphasizes the importance of focusing on what you can control: your own actions, thoughts, and responses. Understanding that envy and jealousy often underlie some people's hostility toward you can help you navigate these complex interactions with greater clarity. Knowing how to deal with these negative emotions maturely and without letting them affect you is a critical skill for maintaining inner peace and staying focused on your personal and professional growth. 2. Misunderstandings and ineffective communication. The truth is that even minor misunderstandings can become seeds for deep and lingering resentment. At the heart of these conflicts often lies a disconnect in how we express ourselves or interpret others' words. Misunderstandings arise when there's a gap between the speaker's intention and how it's perceived by the listener. Just a single misplaced word, a misunderstood tone, or even an untimely facial expression can create a wrong impression. These small communication errors gradually build emotional barriers, leading others to mistakenly perceive you as disrespectful, distant, or even hostile. Effective communication is crucial in any relationship, and without it, conflicts and misunderstandings easily arise. Negative feelings often stem from an inability to convey thoughts and emotions clearly, opening the door to misinterpretations. Furthermore, the absence of active listening also drives us apart, as failing to genuinely understand another's perspective makes it easy to form inaccurate assumptions or judgments. These misunderstandings go beyond simple disagreements and become fertile ground for the growth of negative emotions. When people feel misjudged, they start building a version of the relationship based on these communication failures. Initially, minor misunderstandings can lead to hostility and suspicion, distorting the relationship and misrepresenting the reality of the situation. This is why recognizing the role of misunderstandings and poor communication in causing negative emotions is vital to avoiding unnecessary resentment. We need to strive for transparent, open, and honest communication in all interactions. Give others the benefit of the doubt and put yourself in their shoes to seek clarity when there is uncertainty. By doing so, we can prevent unnecessary grievances and maintain relationships on a foundation of health and positivity. 3. Differences in fundamental values and beliefs. We live in a diverse world where each person is shaped by a unique set of values and beliefs, like distinct puzzle pieces that form the picture of their lives. When these values clash with those around them, it can ignite profound disagreements and even foster resentment. Differences in values don't only stem from political or religious views. They can arise from everyday aspects like opinions on work ethics, lifestyle choices, or even seemingly minor details in daily interactions. When someone holds their own values as the only right or superior way, anyone with a differing belief can quickly be perceived as a threat, a potential enemy that challenges their sense of identity. This defensive mindset creates a barrier, turning minor disagreements into grounds for disdain. When a person's beliefs are deeply rooted, any challenge to them can feel like a personal attack. Thus, these situations easily escalate into conflicts about identity and worldview, where differences transform from simple disagreements into barriers that separate us. The lack of effort to understand others, coupled with rushed judgments, builds walls that block empathy and understanding. These walls not only hinder connection, but allow resentment to quietly grow, especially when fed by unacknowledged fears and biases. In Stoic philosophy, there's a strong emphasis on the understanding that our beliefs and values are products of our personal experiences and perceptions. As Epictetus once said, each of us is a product of our own upbringing and surroundings. Realizing that people may have different sets of values and beliefs due to their own experiences encourages us to extend tolerance and respect for these differences. Open dialogue, tolerance, and respect not only help prevent resentment, but also enrich our understanding and experience of the world. Accepting that not everyone shares our perspective and that this is entirely okay is a crucial step toward harmonious coexistence in a pluralistic society. 4. The influence of rumors and gossip. One of the most common reasons hatred arises stems from the powerful influence of gossip and third-party stories. These whispered rumors, whether fabricated or exaggerated, can severely damage your reputation and image, turning you into a villain in the eyes of others before you even have a chance to defend yourself. Like a fast-spreading virus, gossip seeps into every corner of social relationships, poisoning trust and breeding suspicion. What's especially frightening is that once gossip begins to circulate, it takes on a life of its own, mutating and distorting the truth, creating a false and negative image of you that becomes almost impossible to stop. Particularly, gossip often targets sensitive or negative aspects of your life or personality, aiming to tear you down and cause deep harm. Even if there's no basis to the rumors, they still manage to gain traction because people tend to believe what they hear, especially when the gossip aligns with their existing biases or suspicions. Additionally, the sensational and forbidden nature of rumors makes them even more captivating, leading people to spread them quickly as though they were undeniable truths. The consequences of malicious gossip can be severe, ranging from social isolation and the loss of meaningful relationships to even more significant impacts on both your personal life and career. Hatred fueled by rumors is one of the hardest types of hostility to combat because you're not facing reality, but rather a distorted image, a you that's been twisted by others, whether intentionally or not. It's essential to recognize the dangerous power that gossip can wield. Although it may be challenging, staying committed to the truth, maintaining your integrity, and refusing to be swayed by the negativity being spread are crucial. Remember, your authenticity and transparency in every action are the most powerful antidotes against the poison of rumors. Trusting in your truth and persistently upholding your values are the best ways to dispel the lies and gradually restore your image in others' eyes. Ultimately, truth and integrity hold a strength that surpasses any lies and malice that life may throw at you. 5. Personal insecurities and projection. This is a complex reality that is often overlooked, yet it plays a significant role in fueling interpersonal hostility. When people don't confront and overcome their inner insecurities, these feelings can easily turn into envy, resentment, and eventually hatred towards others, especially those who appear free from similar fears or weaknesses. These insecurities can stem from various sources such as past traumatic experiences, perceived failures, or relentless social comparisons. As the philosopher Seneca once noted, when someone feels insecure, they unconsciously project these emotions onto others, particularly onto those who seem to embody the very qualities they lack or fear. For instance, if someone feels insecure about their career, they may easily develop resentment towards a colleague who is excelling and advancing in their field. This projection acts as a psychological defense mechanism, allowing a person to temporarily cope with feelings of inadequacy by directing their negativity at someone else rather than facing their own insecurities. This process can quickly evolve into hatred, as that person views you as a constant reminder of their own perceived shortcomings and struggles. Another aspect of this dynamic is the feeling of being threatened. Your achievements or positive qualities can serve as a mirror, reflecting what others lack. Instead of feeling inspired by your success, they may perceive it as a challenge to their self-worth, leaving them feeling diminished. This sense of inadequacy can spark a hostile reaction towards you. It's essential to understand, however, that these insecurities and resulting hostility are not due to anything you've done. They are merely expressions of that person's internal struggles. Recognizing this can help you avoid taking others' negativity personally and maintain a healthy perspective in your interactions. Additionally, understanding this dynamic is a crucial first step in approaching these emotions with compassion and empathy, which can help dispel unnecessary misunderstandings and foster a more positive and supportive environment. 6. Lack of empathy and understanding. In an ideal world, every encounter would be driven by empathy and understanding. But reality often tells a different story. One of the deeper reasons why someone might develop feelings of resentment is a lack of these essential qualities. When someone cannot put themselves in another's shoes to understand what they are going through, an invisible wall begins to form, leading to misunderstandings that can eventually spiral into hostility. A lack of empathy isn't just the inability to feel others' emotions. It's a failure to recognize the motivations and responses of others accurately, leading to distorted reactions that can foster resentment where no real offense exists. Rather than understanding others' intentions, they may misinterpret words or actions as slights, which gradually fuels negative feelings. Without empathy, people tend to fall into the traps of prejudice and hasty judgments, often viewing the world in black and white. This rigid outlook results in unfair and shallow assessments of others, devoid of the tolerance needed to appreciate context. Their judgments frequently rely on unfounded assumptions or surface-level impressions, without real effort to delve deeper into the person or situation, creating a breeding ground for resentment rooted in ignorance and misunderstanding. This lack of empathy is often linked to self-centeredness. Narcissistic individuals are so consumed with themselves that they struggle to recognize or appreciate the experiences and emotions of others. This self-absorption can lead to an indifference that makes them disregard the successes or struggles of others with disdain or disinterest. Such an attitude can easily be mistaken for hostility or even hatred, as others feel dismissed or belittled. It's crucial to recognize that in many cases, the resentment someone harbors toward you is more a reflection of their own emotional limitations rather than anything you have done. Understanding this can help you approach these conflicts with a more balanced perspective, striving to build bridges of understanding where possible, or shielding yourself from the negative emotional impacts of others' feelings. Knowing this allows you to stay grounded in compassion, managing these interactions with resilience and empathy. 7. Competition or rivalry. This type of relationship is often steeped in endless rivalry and constant comparison, forming a powerful source of negative emotions. When competition escalates beyond healthy boundaries, it can morph into an obsession, a burning resentment aimed at seeing the other person fail or be brought down. Competition and rivalry are common across all aspects of life, from the workplace to social circles and even within families. In moderation, healthy competition can serve as a motivator for personal growth. But when rivalry becomes an obsession driven by insecurity, jealousy, or past grievances, it transforms into a consuming fire where one's focus shifts from personal success to a desire to see others stumble. This transition from healthy competition to animosity often occurs when someone feels constantly overshadowed or undervalued by another. Rather than using this as motivation to grow and push beyond their own limits, they become fixated on belittling or undermining the other person. This sentiment intensifies when someone perceives the achievements or recognition of another as undeserved, or worse, as something that should have been theirs. As Marcus Aurelius once noted, unchecked rivalry can lead people into destructive behaviors like defamation, sabotage, or personal attacks. When the need to win at any cost takes over, it not only causes people to disregard ethical standards, but also leads to actions aimed directly at harming others. These actions not only hurt the targeted individual, but also erode the character and integrity of those who commit them. Recognizing competition and rivalry as potential sources of hatred is crucial to understanding the nature of these relationships. By identifying these emotions in ourselves or others, we can work towards turning competition into collaboration, or at the very least, learning to compete in a healthy, respectful manner. Remember that another person's success doesn't diminish your own. There is enough room for everyone to shine, and this mindset serves as a powerful antidote to the hatred born from blind rivalry. 8. The influence of social expectations. Social expectations can sometimes lead people to develop negative feelings when they perceive that you don't conform to the norms or standards they hold dear. Imagine living in a community where everyone is expected to adhere to specific cultural traditions and values, but instead you choose a different path. Maybe you pursue an unconventional career or enter a relationship that doesn't fit traditional standards. For some, your choice might come as a shock or even cause discomfort or resentment, as it challenges the beliefs and values they have long upheld. This kind of resentment often stems not from you, but from the invisible pressures of societal expectations and a fear of the unfamiliar. Your decisions serve as a mirror reflecting the rigidity in their thinking, forcing them to confront contradictions within their own beliefs. What's crucial to remember is that this life is yours. Your choices, big or small, are steps in your unique journey toward personal happiness and fulfillment. You don't have to live by others' expectations regardless of their objections. Living true to yourself and following your own values is essential for your well-being and happiness. Only by embracing who you are and standing up to social expectations can you find the freedom to live a full, meaningful life. Don't let the judgments or expectations of others dictate your path. Embrace your authenticity and have the courage to live a life that's truly yours. 9. The lack of recognition. The feeling of being overlooked or unrecognized is one of the deepest roots of resentment and negativity in human relationships. We all want our efforts, successes, and contributions to be acknowledged. But when those contributions are forgotten or undervalued, bitterness can slowly accumulate and eventually turn into hatred. Especially in competitive environments like workplaces, family settings, or social circles, where the desire for recognition is high. As Epicurus once said, when someone feels their achievements are underappreciated, it can easily become a seed of resentment toward those who seem to receive more attention. However, it's important to understand that recognition is subjective and varies based on individual expectations. Some people need validation and appreciation more than others. This requires us to communicate openly and express recognition at the right time to prevent the buildup of unnecessary negative feelings and to foster healthier, more positive relationships. In the journey of navigating these complex emotional dynamics, it's essential to create boundaries with those caught up in their own issues and insecurities. Those who bring negativity and disturb your peace. Setting boundaries is not a sign of weakness. It's a powerful act of self-preservation. Often the animosity directed at you has little to do with who you are and more to do with the person's internal struggles. Whether it stems from jealousy, misunderstanding, value conflicts, rumors, personal insecurity, lack of empathy, or competition, These negative emotions reveal more about the person who harbors them than about you. Remember, you're not responsible for others' negative feelings, nor are you obligated to please everyone. By understanding these factors, you can develop a balanced perspective on relationships and avoid letting negativity affect your self-worth or worldview. Instead, focus on your qualities, strengths, and building positive, healthy relationships for yourself. In closing, I'd like to leave you with a message of encouragement. Remember that each of us is unique with our own qualities, flaws, and individual paths to follow. The reasons why someone might dislike you are in essence reflections of the battles that person is fighting within themselves. So continue on your path with integrity, kindness, and authenticity. Cherish those who genuinely respect and appreciate you for who you are. And in doing so, you'll create a healthier, happier environment for yourself and those around you. And here's the second video. This one will give you another side of Stoicism. What if I told you the people who get under your skin the most are actually showing you something about yourself? Seneca once said that everything that irritates us about others is a mirror, a lesson, not just a nuisance. But here's what he didn't say out loud. Some people are masters at pushing buttons, professional irritants. And the real reason you keep letting them back in, it's not love, it's not loyalty, it's hope, a dangerous kind of hope. See, you're not addicted to peace, you're addicted to the fantasy that if you love hard enough, stay patient long enough, they'll finally wake up. That one day they'll look at you and get it. But Seneca knew the truth, they won't change because they're not confused, they're consistent. And every time you explain yourself to someone who has no intention of hearing you, you hand them power. Seneca said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." The moment you stop performing for their approval, that's when you wake up. That's when you start living. Toxic people only win when you keep reacting. But there's one powerful move that will flip the script. And once you do it, they will never bother you the same way again. So if this hits something real inside you, don't scroll past. Subscribe, like, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's talk about that one move. 1. You don't need to yell, you don't need to yell, you don't need to defend your heart to people who've already decided not to hear you. You don't need to keep justifying your intentions to those who twist your words, no matter how softly you speak. Some people aren't looking for truth, they're looking for control. And every time you respond, every time you over-explain, every time you give them access to your emotional clarity, you feed a cycle that leaves you drained and them empowered. Seneca understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. He didn't use terms like the shadow self or emotional dumping ground, but he knew exactly how human nature works. He saw that when someone is unwilling to take responsibility for their own behavior, they project that chaos onto the nearest person who feels too deeply to walk away. That's you. That's how you end up becoming the emotional trash can for someone else's pain, shame, or self-hatred. And the more you try to fix it by staying calm, by being kind, by trying to show them you're not the enemy, the more they take from you. Not because they're confused, but because they know exactly what they're doing. This is what Seneca warned about when he spoke of psychological inflation. When people begin to believe their ego, their impulses, and their rage are justified simply because they feel them. And when you react to them, when you try to meet them where they are, you inflate that ego further. You are not resolving conflict. You're reinforcing their belief that they are right to treat you like this. You're not just caught in a toxic cycle. You're feeding it with every explanation, every justification, every attempt to make it make sense. But here's what Stoic wisdom teaches, and it's powerful. You don't owe chaos your energy. You don't owe unreasonable people a single drop of your inner peace. Seneca wrote about this in a way that hits harder the more you've lived through emotional manipulation. He believed that true power is in self-control, not in cold attachment, but in the conscious decision to protect your mental space from people who haven't earned access to it. He believed that silence, when used intentionally, isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's war in disguise, let's be honest. If someone disrespects you and your first instinct is to explain yourself rather than exit the situation, something deeper is going on. Maybe you were raised to believe that love means fixing broken people. Maybe you learned somewhere that your worth is tied to your ability to be the bigger person. But that instinct, that reflex to soothe, to stay calm, to make things better isn't always noble. Sometimes it's self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. Stoicism offers another way. It teaches that you don't control what other people say or do. You only control your response. You don't control whether they lie, manipulate, belittle, or ignore you. But you control whether you give them your energy, whether you continue to let them sit in the front row of your life, whether you keep showing up to arguments that exist only to deplete you. And let me be clear, this doesn't mean shutting down. It means leveling up. It means recognizing that your peace is not up for debate. You can walk away with dignity instead of staying to win a fight that was designed to make you lose yourself. That is the Stoic way, not passivity, but mastery of the self. Take a look around your life. Think of the person who always has a crisis, but never accountability. Think of the one who lashes out and then demands that you fix their mood. Think of the one who only says, "I'm sorry," when you've walked away, not when they've hurt you. Now ask yourself, what are you teaching them when you stay? Explain, comfort, repeat. You're teaching them that your boundaries are flexible, that your self-respect is negotiable, that your silence can be bought with just enough guilt or chaos. Seneca didn't believe in fixing people who don't want to grow. He believed in building inner resilience so strong, so rooted, that nothing external could shake it. That's what he meant by true freedom. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from enslavement to reaction. So next time someone tries to bait you into justifying your worth, don't fall for it. Don't reach for logic. Don't reach for calm. Reach for stillness. That's the move they don't expect. That's the power play they can't touch. You don't win by getting louder. You win by walking away with your peace intact and your values unshaken. Because in the end, it's not about the toxic person. It's about you, what you tolerate, what you teach, what you choose, and what you're finally willing to let go of for good. Now let's talk about how to build that kind of strength, because once you learn this next part, the game changes forever. 2, psychological inflation. Some people don't want peace, they want access, not to your heart, but to your reactions. They feed on your emotional energy like it's fuel. The louder you get, the more they win. The more you defend yourself, explain your choices, justify your needs, the more power you hand over. According to Seneca's teachings, this is what he would recognize as psychological inflation. The moment your energy expands around someone else's chaos, you lose yourself. Toxic people don't care if you're praising them or fighting with them. They just want to know they still live rent-free in your mind, that they still have the power to move you. And when they get that, they grow, bloated with the illusion of control. Seneca believed that understanding others begins with understanding ourselves. But manipulative people twist this wisdom. They don't self-reflect. They study you. They observe you closely, learn what triggers you, memorize your emotional weak points, and then strike precisely when you're vulnerable. It's not always conscious, but it is calculated. They weaponize familiarity. They know the right tone, the perfect pause, the exact phrase to slip past your defenses and spark a response. And once you respond, once they've cracked the surface of your calm, they win again. You think silence is weak. Seneca would tell you it's the opposite. Silence is a form of control most people never master. It's not passive, it's deliberate. It's restraint as a weapon. In Stoic philosophy, silence is the shield of the wise. Not because you have nothing to say, but because some people are unworthy of hearing your truth. When you choose not to engage, you're not backing down. You're stepping out of a cycle designed to drain you. That's what Seneca meant by individuation. Though he wouldn't have used that exact word, he believed in psychological sovereignty, the right to rule yourself, the inner discipline to maintain clarity, even when someone is throwing emotional grenades at your feet. He believed that no one should be allowed to disturb your peace without your permission. And once you realize that, everything changes. Here's where it hits. If you've ever found yourself walking away from a conversation and wondering why you feel so small, so defeated, even though you stood your ground, it's likely because the battle was never fair to begin with. You weren't talking to someone who wanted understanding. You were talking to someone who wanted control. And the moment you started defending your worth, you gave them the outcome they were after. Seneca would have told you the wise man doesn't waste breath proving his value to someone who cannot see it. And the stronger you become, the more your silence speaks for you. Silence tells them they can no longer disturb your inner world. Silence says, I no longer play games where I lose either way. Let's get practical. Think about someone in your life who always pulls you into emotional conflict. They may not scream or throw things. Maybe they just sigh at the right time, give backhanded compliments, or go silent until you feel guilty and start chasing their attention. Maybe it's the coworker who always finds a subtle way to question your competence in front of others, or the friend who always forgets your boundaries, but remembers every one of their own. You think you're taking the high road by staying calm, by explaining, by giving second chances. But what you're actually doing is validating their tactics. This is where Stoicism offers real hard-hitting guidance. Stop feeding the fire. Walk away, not with bitterness, but with authority. You don't have to slam the door, just don't open it again. Seneca wasn't interested in revenge or emotional scorekeeping. He taught that power lies in self-governance, in refusing to allow the chaos of others to dictate the stability of your own mind. So here's the solution. Master your response. Reclaim your energy. Stop explaining. Start observing. When someone triggers you, pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction worth my peace? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. The more you practice this, the more untouchable you become. Not cold, not distant, but deeply rooted, like a mountain that doesn't flinch in the storm. Because the goal isn't to get them to understand. The goal is to stop needing them to. That's psychological sovereignty. That's what Stoicism builds in you layer by layer, choice by choice. Let me ask you something. Think of that one person who always finds a way to get under your skin. What would change in your life if they could no longer affect your mood? No longer steer your day? No longer live in your head? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's talk about it. This isn't just philosophy, it's freedom, and you deserve every ounce of it. Next, we'll break down how to apply this mindset in high-stress environments where walking away isn't always an option, like work, family dynamics, or long-term relationships. Because once you master that, you don't just survive these spaces, you dominate them without ever raising your voice. 3. Psychological sovereignty. Silence is not weakness, it's power, it's not avoidance. It's a psychological full stop, a locked gate between you and the chaos someone else is trying to drag you into. Seneca understood this deeply. He believed that silence wasn't about retreating from confrontation. It was about refusing to bleed for battles that only exist to feed someone else's need for control. And the most powerful people in any space aren't the ones speaking over everyone. They're the ones who've mastered the art of restraint, the ones who speak less but are heard more. That's psychological sovereignty. It's when your peace is no longer on the table, when your energy is no longer up for auction. Every time you explain yourself to someone who feeds on your confusion, you trade a piece of your clarity for their chaos. Seneca knew this before the term gaslighting even existed. He warned that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, and that the moment you start explaining yourself to someone who doesn't genuinely want to understand, you're not being heard. You're being studied. They're listening for leverage, listening to find your weak spot, not to understand, but to dominate. This is how manipulators work. It's not random, it's a system. They get close enough to learn your patterns, how you react, when you flinch, what makes you overthink, and then they twist it. And when you engage, you invite them deeper into your mind, your emotions, your sense of self. Seneca would say, you've allowed someone to rearrange the furniture in a room they don't own. And that's how you lose sovereignty. Not in one big moment, but in small, subtle responses that chip away at your inner stillness. Let me give you an example. A woman named Elena shared how her sister would constantly provoke arguments over trivial things, then spin the narrative to make Elena feel like the aggressor. Every time Elena tried to clarify, to explain, to smooth things over, she ended up more confused, more drained, more resentful, until one day she stopped. She didn't argue, didn't text back, didn't show up for the bait. And just like that, the game collapsed. The manipulation stopped working. Not because her sister changed, but because Elena did. She took her energy back. That's what Seneca meant by owning your mind. Psychological sovereignty isn't about never being hurt. It's about choosing not to keep handing the blade to the same person. You want to disarm a manipulator. Don't react. Don't correct them. Don't chase closure. They can't twist silence. They can't flip what you never gave them. The moment you go quiet, they lose their grip because suddenly they're left with the one thing they've been running from all along themselves. Seneca believed that the most terrifying thing for the average person is to truly face themselves without distraction. And manipulative people, they rely on your reactions to avoid doing just that. If you don't give them your energy, they're left to sit in their own chaos. And most of them can't take it. That's why you'll notice toxic people panic when you don't respond. They'll push harder, escalate, guilt trip, play victim, or provoke new drama. Anything to pull you back into the cycle. But if you stay silent, not out of fear, but out of mastery, you starve the cycle. The story ends. There's nothing left to twist, no role left to play. You've left the stage and they're performing alone. Seneca believed that the highest form of peace is inner stillness that no one can disturb. And in a world constantly demanding your attention, your opinion, your reaction, not responding is revolutionary. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't even need to block them in anger. Just disappear from their psychological radar. Let them sit in the silence. Let them face the echo of their own behavior. Now here's the part most people struggle with: letting go without needing to be understood. The Stoic path isn't about getting the last word. It's about understanding that the need to be understood by the wrong people is a form of bondage. You don't need their understanding to heal. You don't need their apology to move on. You need to stop participating in your own emotional exhaustion. So let me ask you this. Who in your life are you still explaining yourself to? Who keeps pulling you into conversations that only leave you feeling smaller, never seen? And more importantly, what would happen if you just stopped? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. This is how you begin to rebuild your boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. In the next part, we'll explore how to maintain this silence, not just as an escape, but as a long-term strategy for psychological freedom. Because once you claim your peace, you need to learn how to protect it. 4. Stop. Stop replying. Stop explaining why you've gone quiet. Let them talk to your absence. Let them sit in the silence that follows their chaos. According to Seneca's understanding of human nature, silence is not emptiness. It's communication. It is precise, sharp, and deliberate. It says everything that words no longer need to carry. You no longer have access to me. That's not bitterness, that's boundaries. And in a world that constantly demands emotional availability, it is an act of psychological rebellion. Seneca once said, "Your vision becomes clear when you turn inward." You can't see your own path if you're constantly staring at someone else's demands. That's why Stoic philosophy emphasizes clarity over chaos, presence over performance. Yet toxic people thrive on pulling you into performance. They act confused about what they did to hurt you, not because they genuinely don't know, but because pretending not to understand keeps you explaining. And as long as you're explaining, they're in control. Seneca understood this manipulation for what it is, a tactic. Not always conscious, but certainly effective. The longer they can keep you talking, reasoning, justifying, the longer they avoid accountability. And more importantly, the longer they stay in power. You think you're clarifying. You think you're being mature, but they know exactly how to keep you on the hook by acting oblivious just long enough to draw another explanation out of you. It's psychological control masked as confusion. That's why your silence is so disruptive. When you stop giving them anything to respond to, they lose the script. They can't manipulate what you didn't say. They can't flip silence into guilt the way they flip your words. And here's where Seneca's Stoic wisdom cuts deep. You don't owe anyone access to your mind just because they've gotten used to it. You don't have to keep people in your life just because they demand a response every time they feel uncomfortable. Emotional access is a privilege, not a right. We often make the mistake of thinking we have to announce our boundaries for them to matter. But the truth is, boundaries aren't about the other person. They're about your own clarity. You can say nothing and still draw a line. You can go quiet and still send a message. In fact, silence often says it best. It tells them, I no longer participate in dynamics that cost me my peace. That's the kind of inner stillness Stoicism points us toward. Peace that is earned through choice, not conflict. Think about it. If someone only stops hurting you when you finally raise your voice or break down crying, that's not a relationship. It's a trap. And if they only respect your boundaries after a dramatic confrontation, then they never respected you in the first place. They just feared the consequences. Seneca taught that power doesn't come from how loudly you speak. It comes from how firmly you hold your ground. You don't have to slam a door to close it. You can walk away without noise, without anger, without drama, and still never return. Start treating your mental energy like what Seneca would call psychic gold. Rare, valuable, not meant for everyone. Not everyone deserves to hear your thoughts. Not everyone earns the right to influence your emotions. If someone drains you, undermines you, or constantly twists your intentions, you don't need a final conversation. You don't need to craft the perfect message or wait for the right moment to leave. You just stop quietly, clearly, finally. Stop thinking you owe them closure. You don't. They already know what they did. That's the part most people don't want to admit. Toxic people always know. They may not own it. They may deny, deflect, or distract. But deep down, they know. They test your boundaries on purpose. They push, not because they're unaware, but because they want to see if you'll fold. And when you explain, they win. When you justify, they gain ground. But when you say nothing, they're left to face a mirror they've been avoiding their entire lives. And that's the truth most manipulators can't handle. Without your emotional labor, they are stuck with their own reflection. Seneca believed that most people will do anything to avoid true self-confrontation, even if it means destroying someone else's peace. That's why they cling to your reaction. It's not love, it's distraction. You are their escape from themselves. But you don't have to play that role anymore. The moment you stop responding, you begin reclaiming your psychological sovereignty. And that's where the healing begins. Not in convincing anyone else to change, but in changing the way you give away your energy. Next, we'll get into the methods to reinforce this silence. Not as a temporary break, but as a permanent boundary. Because maintaining peace isn't just about what you walk away from. It's about what you commit to protecting every day from the inside out. If you found these insights valuable, let me know by commenting yes below. Your thoughts matter, and I'd love to hear from you. 5. Silence. Silence is what breaks the cycle. Not words, not confrontation, not another long explanation to someone who has no intention of changing. Silence ends their psychological game not because it avoids conflict, but because it refuses to feed it. According to Seneca's wisdom, silence isn't passive. It's what he would have called active choice. The conscious, powerful decision to choose yourself over someone else's chaos. It's not avoidance, it's clarity. It's the line where your peace finally takes precedence over their need for control. People will call you cold for going quiet. They'll say, you've changed. And they're right because they were never warm when they had access to you. They thrived on your tolerance, your explanations, your second chances. They liked the version of you that tolerated emotional harm and called it compassion. But that version is gone. That version is what silence buries. What's left is someone who understands their value so clearly, there's nothing left to prove. That's what they can't handle. Because toxic people don't want to fix things. They want to stay relevant. They don't want resolution. They want residence in your mind, your heart, your thoughts. The moment you stop reacting, they're erased. Not by accident, but by your will. Seneca taught that real power isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's self-contained. He knew that silence was a kind of awakening, a shift where your energy no longer leaks toward people who can't hold it with care. When you stop speaking, it's not because you have nothing to say, it's because you realize they were never listening. Not really, they were just waiting for their turn to twist your words, to use your openness against you. Silence is when you finally stop handing them material to work with. There's a woman named Morgan who always used to explain herself to her emotionally abusive partner. Every slight, every argument, she tried to fix with calm reasoning. She gave space, she gave time, she gave benefit after benefit of the doubt. But it never changed. Every word she spoke became another opening for him to deny, distort, or deflect. Until the day she went quiet, not out of exhaustion, but out of resolve. She stopped answering his messages. She didn't explain why. She didn't write the long letter. She disappeared mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And for the first time in years, she saw him for what he really was, someone who never wanted healing, only control. That silence was her freedom. Seneca believed that peace doesn't come from being understood by others. It comes from understanding yourself. That's the heart of Stoicism. You don't have to scream to be heard when you already hear yourself clearly. When your internal voice gets louder than the noise around you, you finally see what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You realize that not everyone should have access to your heart, your time, your mind. Your attention is your life force, and where it flows, your emotional power follows. Some people do not deserve to flow through your inner world anymore. Not because they're bad, but because they're reckless with what you offer. Silence is not weakness. Silence is individuation. It is psychological sovereignty. It is the inner awakening that comes when you realize that reacting to someone's chaos only gives it more power. When you go silent, you stop playing a role in their performance. You step off their stage. You stop allowing your peace to be disrupted by someone who feeds on confusion. That's not being cold, that's being awake. Seneca understood that true power is internal. It cannot be taken, it is only given away. And the moment you stop giving it to those who misuse it, you begin to reclaim it in full. Your silence isn't the end of your strength, it's the beginning of your freedom. And here is the third video. This video will give you another perspective on Stoicism. You think being nice is safe, harmless? Let's get real, it's a liability. Being too nice doesn't earn you respect. It earns you a spot on someone's list of easy targets. It says you're predictable, compliant, the guy who will say yes while grinding his teeth in private. And let me tell you, users, manipulators, and emotional pickpockets love a man like that. They see your politeness as permission, your agreeableness as access. Most men who brag about being nice aren't noble. They're scared. Scared to say no, scared to offend, scared to stand alone with their own values. And that fear, that's blood in the water. So today we're going to break down 6 signs you've turned nice into an invitation for disrespect, and why it's time to kill that habit before it kills your self-respect. If you're done being everyone's personal doormat like this video, subscribe for no BS Stoic wisdom, and drop a comment. I choose respect over approval. Let's get into it. Sign 1. You can't say no without guilt. You can always tell a man who can't say no by the exhaustion in his eyes. He doesn't complain loudly. He doesn't rage. He just looks tired, worn down from shouldering obligations that were never his to begin with. And it's not because he's so generous or selfless. It's because he's terrified of being seen as difficult. He's been conditioned to think that denying someone is the same as betraying them. I knew a man like that. Harold was his name. We worked together for years. A good man, dependable to a fault. He was the one who picked up the slack when others slacked off, covered shifts without complaint, sat through meetings he didn't need to be in, volunteered for projects that went nowhere. You could see the relief in other people's faces when he said yes, because he always did. He'd smile and say no problem. But there was always that pause, that flicker of resignation before he spoke. I remember once we were having a drink after work, and he admitted he didn't even remember the last time he had a weekend to himself. His wife was furious at how absent he'd become. His kids had stopped asking if he'd make it to their games, and he hated himself for it. But he still couldn't say no. Why? Because somewhere along the line, he decided other people's approval was worth more than his own peace. He thought being agreeable was the path to respect. He thought being dependable meant being constantly available. And let's be clear, people took advantage. They learned Harold would say yes before they finished asking. They offloaded their responsibilities onto him without a second thought. He was such a nice guy. But Harold wasn't happy. He wasn't even respected. They liked that he was easy, predictable. But when the big promotions came up, he wasn't even considered. Management didn't see a leader. They saw someone who'd do the grunt work without complaint. That's the danger of being too nice. It's not that you'll get hurt immediately. It's that you slowly lose yourself in the service of people who don't care what it costs you. You start living someone else's life filled with obligations you never chose and resentment you can't shake. And Stoic philosophy is mercilessly clear about this. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That isn't just a call to avoid lying to others. It's a demand to stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending that saying yes when you mean no is virtue. Stop calling your fear of confrontation kindness. Because here's the truth that stings. No one respects a man who won't respect his own boundaries. When you say yes to everything, you're not being good, you're being weak. And people know it. They may thank you. They may praise you, but they'll keep coming back for more because they know you'll give it. And don't fool yourself into thinking it's humility. Real humility is knowing your limits and honoring them. Saying no when it matters. Protecting your time, your energy, your commitments to the people who truly rely on you. Your family, your real friends, yourself. Harold eventually burned out. He had a minor heart attack in his late 50s. The doctor told him to reduce stress. Take it easy. For the first time in decades, Harold had to say no. And you know what happened? The world kept turning. The company found someone else to do the late nights. The people who'd leaned on him so heavily stopped calling. And Harold realized they hadn't valued him. They'd used him. But by then he was too tired to be angry. He was just sad. Sad that he'd handed over so many years of his life to people who didn't deserve them. Don't be Harold. Don't wait for your body or your spirit to give out before you set limits. If you want real freedom, you have to earn it. And that means learning to say no without guilt, without apology, without explaining yourself to people who never explain themselves to you. Because the first step toward respect from others and from yourself is to draw the line you won't cross, no matter how nicely they ask. And once you've mastered that, you'll be ready to face the second sign you're too nice. The one that's even more insidious. Because it's not about what you do for others, it's about how you see yourself when you do it. And that's what we'll talk about next. Sign 2, you apologize for existing. It's a brutal truth most men won't admit, but here it is. People can smell difference before you even open your mouth. You don't have to announce it. They see it in the way you avert your eyes, the way you hunch your shoulders to make yourself smaller, the way you clear your throat before speaking, as if to apologize for taking up space at all. They see it in your constant disclaimers, your instinctive sorry before you even voice a thought. We're taught early on that apologizing is polite, that it shows humility, respect, consideration, and there's a place for that. But there's a dark side to this habit that too many men carry for decades without ever examining. It starts with saying sorry for the small things, bumping into someone, interrupting a conversation, but it metastasizes. Before you know it, you're apologizing for having opinions, for needing help, for wanting better, for simply existing in someone else's space. And people learn quickly what to do with a man like that. They don't reward his humility, they exploit it. Because when you act like your needs are an inconvenience, people will believe you. They'll take you at your word. They'll prioritize themselves without a second thought because you've shown them you'll always step aside. This isn't some rare psychological defect. It's astonishingly common, especially among older men who've spent their lives providing for others, who've internalized the idea that their role is to support, to yield, to absorb discomfort so others can stay comfortable. These men become masters at swallowing their own needs, dismissing their own desires, telling themselves it's noble to put themselves last. But let's be clear, there's a difference between selflessness and self-erasure. Selflessness is when you choose to give from a position of strength. Self-erasure is when you don't believe you have the right to take up space in the first place. And Stoic philosophy has no patience for that second path. A Stoic man doesn't seek to dominate a room, but he refuses to disappear in it. He understands that his voice matters because it's honest, considered, and deliberate. He knows that silence is powerful when it's a choice, not when it's a default. Seneca said it plainly. It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. Think about that. An unconquerable mind doesn't flinch when others raise their voices. It doesn't tremble at the idea of offending someone with the truth. It doesn't apologize for having boundaries, for existing with needs, for speaking with weight. This doesn't mean you have to be brash or loud. It means you don't preface every opinion with an apology. You don't soften every truth until it's meaningless. You don't live in fear that your very presence is an inconvenience. Because when you do, you're not being humble. You're giving people permission to dismiss you. The worst part is that you think you're being kind. You think you're avoiding conflict. You think you're being easy to be around. But in reality, you're training everyone around you to see you as someone whose needs come last, someone whose voice can be ignored, someone who will say yes even when he wants to scream no. And let's be honest, the older you get, the heavier this burden becomes because you start to see how many years you spent tiptoeing through your own life, how many moments you stayed quiet when you should have spoken, how many times you bit your tongue until it bled rather than risk making someone uncomfortable. Stoic philosophy demands better of you. It demands that you see yourself clearly, not as a supporting character in everyone else's life, but as a man with his own story to tell. It demands that you stop apologizing for occupying space on this planet, for having thoughts that matter, for needing things that deserve to be met. It's not arrogance, it's honesty, it's strength. It's the quiet certainty that you have as much right to be here as anyone else. So if you find yourself apologizing before you speak, if you feel that gut-deep fear of offending someone just by existing, stop. Take a breath. Remember that your silence doesn't make the world better. It just makes you smaller. And once you see that clearly, you're ready to confront the next sign that you're too nice. The one that hides behind a smiling mask of peace, but is really just fear of confrontation. And that's what we'll examine next. Sign 3. You avoid conflict at all costs. You can always tell when a man fears conflict. It's written in the careful way he phrases his sentences, always leaving himself an exit. It's in the way he smiles when someone crosses the line, pretending he didn't notice. It's in the way he agrees too quickly, even when his eyes say otherwise. This isn't diplomacy. This isn't grace under pressure. This is surrender dressed up as manners, and it's far more common than most will admit. Men tell themselves they're keeping the peace when what they're really doing is avoiding discomfort. They convince themselves they're being mature by letting things slide. But there's a cost to this constant compromise, and it's steeper than most realize. Every time you swallow disrespect to keep the peace, you're making a quiet promise to the person in front of you that they can do it again, and they will. The human mind is sharp at picking up social cues, and people notice the man who refuses to enforce his own boundaries. They sense the tremor in your voice when you decline to challenge them. They see the way you drop your eyes when they push you, and once they see it, they know they can keep pushing. They know you'll yield. You've taught them that your comfort is negotiable if it keeps things easy. For men, especially those who've spent decades trying to be the rock for everyone else, this avoidance becomes second nature. You've carried the weight of other people's expectations, so you minimize your own. You tell yourself it's not worth the argument, that it's better to let it pass, that making a scene isn't your style. But avoiding conflict doesn't make you noble. It makes you complicit in your own humiliation. It turns every insult into something you endorse through silence. It teaches people that they can get away with small acts of disrespect that eventually grow into open disregard. And this isn't just about the grand insults. It's the subtle slights, the small jokes at your expense that you laugh off awkwardly, the dismissive interruptions you let slide, the decisions made without you because they know you won't object. These aren't isolated incidents. They're the proof that people have learned you're safe to disrespect. This is where Stoic philosophy draws its hard, cold line. It doesn't tell you to seek out conflict for its own sake. It doesn't celebrate rage or revenge, but it does demand you see the truth without illusions. A Stoic man doesn't hide from reality because it's uncomfortable. He faces it squarely and decides what's worthy of his response. The Stoics understood that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the product of boundaries that are respected. And boundaries don't announce themselves. They're enforced. They're enforced through words, through tone, through action, even through silence used with precision. It takes strength to be the man who will let things be uncomfortable for a moment so they don't get worse in the long run. It's not about being loud or aggressive. It's about refusing to betray yourself for the illusion of harmony. It's recognizing that biting your tongue can be an act of violence against your own dignity if it becomes a habit. This is what so many men miss as they age. They look back and see all the times they stayed silent, all the times they let others cross lines. They see the relationships built on resentment instead of respect, and they regret that they didn't say something when it would have mattered most. Stoicism calls you to end that pattern now. It calls you to recognize that avoiding conflict isn't the same as achieving peace, that the man who never challenges disrespect is the one who guarantees he'll keep experiencing it. Because when you finally understand this, you're ready to tackle the next sign you're too nice, the one that hides in your craving for universal approval, and how that hunger for acceptance is often the very thing that costs you respect. And that's what we'll explore next. Sign 4, you need everyone to like you. You can see it in the way some men walk into a room, scanning faces for approval before they even open their mouths. They listen too carefully, not because they want to understand, but because they're calibrating. They're rehearsing how to say what they think people want to hear. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They agree with ideas that make them uneasy. They're always a mirror, never a man. I once knew a guy named Ted who was the textbook example. He was one of those men everyone described as so easy to get along with. He could talk about sports with the diehards, sip wine and debate politics with the professionals, drop F-bombs with the guys at the shop, or speak in hushed tones with the church crowd. He was always liked, always invited, but if you asked anyone what Ted really believed about anything, they'd hesitate. They didn't know. Ted's problem wasn't that he lacked opinions, it was that he hid them. He was terrified of being disliked, so he shapeshifted to avoid any friction. And for years he told himself this was social skill, emotional intelligence, the ability to get along. But there was a hollowness to it all. Ted never had real loyalty from anyone because loyalty requires knowing where a man stands. No one respected him enough to ask his advice on anything serious. He was liked, sure, but in the way you like a mascot or a pleasant hotel clerk. Useful, agreeable, instantly forgettable. The worst part was Ted knew it. He could see it in this way people's eyes glazed over when he spoke, in the way they'd talk over him at parties, in the way they'd come to him for a ride, for a favor, for a nod of agreement, but never for truth. He once told me over a beer that he felt invisible in his own life, that he wasn't sure who he even was anymore. Decades of bending to fit had left him with no shape of his own. He said he was haunted by the idea that if he died tomorrow, people would say he was a nice guy and then immediately forget him. That's the curse of living for approval. You become unthreatening, you become bland, you become forgettable. And people don't respect what they forget. Stoicism is merciless about this. It demands you choose truth over comfort. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. In other words, why contort yourself to win the favor of people who don't even see you, who don't understand you? A Stoic man isn't rude for the sake of it. He doesn't seek enemies, but he refuses to trade authenticity for acceptance. He knows the cost is too high. Because when you live for approval, you sacrifice your integrity, your principles, your self-respect. You lose the only thing that ever made you worthy of respect in the first place, your conviction. We're taught from childhood to be liked. Don't rock the boat, don't argue, don't be difficult. And sure, there's wisdom in picking your battles, but there's rot in avoiding all of them because you can't stand for anything if you're terrified of standing out. That's the part that older men especially wrestle with. After years of trying to be the dependable one, the team player, the man who never says the hard thing first, you look around and realize your voice has lost its weight. You see the younger men who don't even notice you, the friends who only call when they want something, the colleagues who pass you over for leadership, advisory because you never demonstrated any. Ted's story isn't rare. It's epidemic and it's preventable. but only if you accept that being liked is cheap and being respected is expensive. The man who insists on universal approval will get it, but at the cost of being seen as inconsequential. The man who is willing to be disliked for standing firm will be remembered. That's the promise of Stoicism. Not that people will like you, but that you will like yourself. That you will know who you are and speak that truth even if it offends. That you will build relationships based on respect instead of convenience. And once you understand that, you'll be ready to confront the next sign of dangerous niceness. The compulsion to explain yourself to those who have never earned the right to question you. And that's what we'll talk about next. Sign 5, you explain yourself too much. It's an odd fact about human behavior that the man who knows the least about what he wants often feels the need to talk the most about why he wants it. There's something in us, especially those of us raised to be agreeable, that's terrified of simply saying no. Instead, we wrap it in disclaimers, excuses, and long-winded justifications. We think if we just explain it well enough, they'll approve of our boundary. They'll nod in understanding. They'll forgive us for daring to have our own limits. But that entire approach is a betrayal of self-respect. Because the moment you start performing your reasons like a salesman, desperate to close the deal, you reveal your fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being disliked, fear of looking selfish. And people see it. They know you don't believe you have the right to simply stand firm. When you feel compelled to soothe everyone's feelings about your decision, you're not being polite, you're being afraid. You're asking permission to hold the line. You're signaling that your no is negotiable, that it can be worked on and whittled down with just the right argument or emotional appeal. And that's exactly what happens. You say you can't help them move next weekend because you're already busy, and then you apologize for it. Explain you have family obligations. Assure them you really wish you could. They hear the hesitance. They sense the crack in the wall. So they push. They tell you it is just for an hour. They suggest you come after your other plans. And now you're in a corner because you never actually defended your time. You tried to sell them on respecting it. A Stoic man has no use for that. He knows that truth stands on its own. It doesn't require decorations or apologies. He says no with finality. He doesn't justify it to people who never justify their demands of him. He knows that every time you explain yourself to someone who feels no need to explain themselves to you, you're reinforcing an imbalance. You're saying without words that your time, your comfort, your needs are lesser. This is especially corrosive as you age because the older you get, the more you see how many hours were wasted explaining yourself to people who didn't deserve the explanation. How many relationships were maintained on the condition that you'd always be the one to bend? How much of your life was given away in small concessions because you were too worried about seeming rude or ungrateful to simply say no? It's a bitter realization, but it can also be a freeing one, because once you see the pattern clearly, you can end it. You can recognize that your boundaries don't need to be up for debate. They're not committee decisions. They're sovereign. And when you treat them that way, the people around you will learn to as well. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to be callous. It asks you to be honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what you'll accept. Honest about the fact that not everyone is owed an explanation for your choices. Epictetus wrote that we should act in all things with a view to what is fit in becoming a man. And what's fit for a man is to stand behind his decisions without trembling. There's dignity in brevity, in saying no and leaving it there, in letting silence do the work of reinforcing the boundary. It's not your job to manage other people's disappointment. It's not your responsibility to preempt their feelings by sacrificing your own needs on the altar of their comfort. If you're the kind of man who's always explaining himself, always managing the emotional climate of every conversation, consider what that's cost you. Consider how it's trained the people around you to see you as someone whose decisions can be shaped, whose no can be negotiated. And ask yourself if that's the legacy you want to leave. Because when you're ready to stop performing, to stop justifying, you're ready to reclaim your time, your respect, and your peace. And once you've done that, you'll be prepared to recognize the final sign of dangerous niceness. The one that hurts you most of all, tolerating outright disrespect. And that's what we'll confront next. Sign 6, you tolerate disrespect. There's a certain quiet erosion that happens to a man who tolerates disrespect. It doesn't come in a single moment of betrayal or some dramatic showdown. It's in the 1,000 tiny cuts you let slide, the snide remark you let hang in the air unchallenged, the plans canceled last minute without apology that you excuse away, the dismissive laugh when you share something serious that you try to forget. Each one feels too small to make a fuss over. You tell yourself you're being mature, that you're rising above it, that conflict isn't worth it. You might even call it patience or being the bigger person. But what you're really doing is teaching them exactly how to treat you. Because disrespect is a test people run, often without even realizing it. They push a little, see how you react. If you do nothing, they push more. It's human nature. People calibrate their behavior based on what you allow. And when you make it clear, you'll absorb insult after insult to keep things smooth. They understand they can keep going. They will take your quiet for consent. This isn't about encouraging endless confrontation or living in a state of rage. It's about understanding the price of unchallenged disrespect. Because over time, it rewrites your relationships. It changes how people see you. And worse, it changes how you see yourself. You begin to doubt whether you have the right to protest, whether you're overreacting, whether you're being difficult. A man who swallows enough disrespect without a word eventually forgets the taste of self-respect. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to ignore offenses so you can look calm. It tells you to recognize reality for what it is without comforting lies. As Marcus Aurelius warned, if someone does wrong, it is because they believe it is the right thing to do. When someone crosses your line, it's because they think they can, because you showed them it's safe. Seneca wrote, "He who does not prevent a crime when he can encourages it." It applies to you just as much. When you don't speak up when your boundaries are crossed, you're not preventing harm. You're encouraging it. You're setting the precedent that you will tolerate being overlooked, interrupted, mocked, used. The older you get, the more tempting it is to let these things slide. You're tired. You want peace. You think you've earned the right not to argue. But true peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of boundaries. It's the certainty that the people around you know where the line is and respect it. Not because you threaten them, but because you taught them you won't hesitate to draw it. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." What is in your power is your response, your willingness to say clearly and calmly, "That doesn't work for me." Your refusal to laugh along at your own expense, your insistence on being treated as an equal, not a prop in someone else's show. There is a power in measured confrontation. It doesn't mean shouting. It means looking a man in the eye and saying without fear that he crossed a line. It means not needing to rage because the truth is enough. It means knowing when to speak up and, if necessary, when to walk away completely, because the cost of allowing disrespect is cumulative. It poisons relationships that could have been real. It hardens you against trust. It convinces you that quiet suffering is the price of connection. But that's a lie. The relationships worth having are the ones that can survive the truth of your boundaries. So if you find yourself constantly smoothing things over, telling yourself it's not worth the fight, ask what that's bought you. Ask if your silence has earned you respect or simply made you easier to ignore. Because the Stoic man isn't a doormat. He's not eager to fight, but he's prepared to defend. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The strength to speak when needed, to hold silence when it matters, to draw your lines in stone knowing you're the one who enforces them. And when you master that, you stop being too nice in the way that gets you used, ignored, or laughed at. You become a man worth listening to, worth respecting, worth knowing. If any of this hit you like a slap in the face, good. That means you're still honest enough to admit it. Enough with being nice if it means breaking your own back to keep others comfortable. Enough with selling your self-respect for scraps of approval. The truth is the world doesn't bow to nice. It bows to the man who's clear about who he is, what he'll tolerate, and what he absolutely won't. It respects the man who doesn't need to be liked to stand firm. So if you're done being the agreeable doormat everyone wipes their feet on, like this video. Subscribe for unfiltered Stoic truth that'll keep you sharp, and drop a comment below. I choose respect over approval because you deserve to walk through this world as a man no one dares to mistake for weak again.